with a colleague of mine from Spain, Jorge Vázquez Herrero, we have been exploring the first phase of VR journalism, in the sense that we did a sort of a content analysis on Euronews and the New York Times short 3 minutes long sort of daily news videos, which means that to us it means that how this newsroom adopt the new technology and what kind of content they produce, how they combine their narrative and journalistic conventions to this new medium. So we had we took a random sample of 100 pieces, out of which we coded features of production, distribution, topics, narrative strategies, sensory feedback, and the user's role. And this is a work still in progress, so there will be a more qualitative research on special topics still. And the findings are, I go just through them because I think that it's important to see where this all started in the sense that this was sort of the first really big effort from the newsrooms to adopt these new technologies. So if you think of the length, it was in New York Times it was about 2 minutes. In Euronews it was on average it was a bit longer. New York Times had more staff attached to these productions. And it's important to notice that Samsung was sponsoring both companies at start, and we also wanted to see how it was disseminated, how this was sort of getting into the audience. So we listed the platforms that they were using, like YouTube, their own website and apps. An important thing is to notice that the New York Times reported also that Facebook was a really important platform in disseminating the content, because the users of Facebook like to share these news. The amount of views wasn't that big. New York Times had 2.6 million when Euronews had only 137,000 views counted from our sample. But the most viewed piece in New York Times was the atomic bomb of Hiroshima, 2.3 million. And in Euronews the most viewed was St. Benfica's mascot gives eagle's eye view of the Lisbon Stadium. I wonder whether somebody has seen that. It's from the camera is on top of the eagle, which is flying around the stadium. If you think of the reactions of the audience, the New York Times had more reactions, likes and dislikes, and Euronews was really low, in the sense that people didn't comment those too much. With topics, there were differences, in the sense that the New York Times was more about social issues, Trump, questions of equality, minorities, urban traditions, disabilities, and culture, art, architecture type of topics. In a way, it resembles how New York Times is in general, I'd say. Euronews was more about hard news like politics, elections, French presidential elections, German federal elections, pieces on tourism and science, technology, nature type of thing. So there's a division in there. And when we looked at the narrative strategies, we found that there are really big differences in the sense that New York Times, Euronews wanted to incorporate this process in their normal reporting. So reporter was involved or visible in the news. Whereas New York Times showed rather the sources talking, not the journalist at all. And what New York Times also liked was this invisible or neutral narration in which you don't see sort of the production at all. You are just in a new environment. So here are the narrative strategies, and you can easily say that Euronews was about reporters, New York Times was about source. And this gives some food for thought for some speculations in our future article. If you think of the sensor feedback, we know that this video that we have been trying here also is it doesn't allow full experience, and the newsrooms couldn't use more visual or features. There were like panoramic photos, virtual titles, graphics and visualizations at few of them, but not too many. So it was quite plain. If you think of the sound environment, the New York Times had more sophisticated sound environments in the sense that they had some pre-recorded materials involved. One of the things that is crucial to VR journalism, or at least 360 video journalism, is this: how are we going to work with the camera or the tripod? Are we trying to hide it that we were there as journalists, or are we sort of pointing out that yes, we were there and you? So that's one of the interesting questions that this field is going to tackle with, I think. So we found that the tripod was hidden in half of the cases, but in half of the cases it was really visible, and also the sponsor was really visible. So in that sense, that's a big issue. How we are seeing the journalist, or are we seeing the institution that's behind this all? There were questions about cyber sickness. We were using those same cardboard devices, and we detected that out of 100 there were 26 cases in which camera movements or loops or changing scenes or changing height or using very short cutting or people looking very odd when crossing the stitching area. So they are there, and I'd say that the journalist didn't quite handle well with that problem. It's also about technology, as Turo said, but it's also about just plain skills of doing this. To conclude, both companies used this video as a complementary role, and they were, as I already mentioned, they were different profiles. And Your News was using journalists as storytellers more than the New York Times. And you can ask whether the reason why New York Times was presenting more the reality than the journalist may be to do something with the U.S. Journalism in general, which tends to want to show the world as it is. But the last conclusions are that this limited interactivity and still quite impractical gear combined to the rather blurry, unsharp footage are reasons why these news are not become so popular. And after the Samsung sponsorship was gone, both companies have practically stopped making these short videos. They are still doing longer ones. And New York Times is experimenting with other technologies like augmented reality, as we mentioned. That maybe this was sort of already a historical moment in the scene, that we saw not the end of the immersive VR journalism, but the end of the short 360 journalism news, at least for the time being. Thank you.